curious, like, when can you say, or like, when can you look back and say, I got interested in science? Was it like an event that happened? Was it a gradual thing? Did you kind of like always orient that way as a kid, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I would have to say I was just born into it, and not to be like cheeky, but like my dad was a veterinarian and my mom was a nurse, so like it was like dinner talk was science, and they were divorced, but even though didn't matter what house I was in, everything was either what's happening in the hospital for humans or what's happening in the hospital for animals, right? And I mean, I remember being, 5, 6, 7, 8, and getting to be in the surgery room with my dad and watching him do some really cool surgeries. I mean, the one that comes to my mind is a dachshund that had a bone tumor in its jaw, and so he removed the jawbone and actually took out part of the bone of the iliac and the hip and reshaped it to kind of give this dog bone structure within its face. And I'm 8, 9 at the time, and I'm like, man, this is cool. Like this is what I want to do, right? And so I kind of grew up, and I was like, okay, I'm interested in science. Maybe I want to be a veterinarian. Kind of then jumped in. Maybe I want to be a medical doctor. Different things along the way. But that kind of that core, like science is what kind of always drove me, or what always had me curious, right? Always questioning why things happen, what things are made of, if we do this, what happens, pushing buttons, good and bad, right? got me in trouble sometimes, but, generally overall, like, experimenting with life was kind of, I guess, my thing growing up. And so going into university, I actually thought I wanted to be a zoo vet. I thought it would be so cool to be like, hey, I came home today and did a C-section on a tiger, right? Or, something like that, right? Just something like where, it was just so exotic that like every day was unique. And, so I always had this mindset of being in science, and, life for me kind of took a strong turn, and that happened. And I'm happy to share the story, but my first day of university, my brother actually passed away. Coming to meet me at the university, motorcycle accident, right here in London. So this was something, yeah. So, why I say this is what progressed me into research was, he had the main thing that did it was the spinal cord, severization. So he basically, disconnected, spinal cord at the cervix. And, at the time, me and my dad and my brother actually were already looking into stem cells and how they could be used for animals, particularly for animals that have been hit by cars, or kind of this idea, again, spinal cord regeneration. And then the way that the universe kind of shaped me in, my brother had this terrible accident where he eventually passed, but from it kind of almost was like an epiphany, if you would, right? And it's something like a strong push to like, this is what your life, this is what you need to do, right? Or this is what's missing life. And at the time it was stem cells, and it's changed from then, but that was really the key starting point was, in theory, stem cells could fix this type of injury, right? If we can regrow the tissue, we can regrow the cells, we can fix an injury. And that's a very naive thought, but at the time, that was the cope, right? That was a way to kind of cope with it. It was like, there's nothing we could have done, but, hey, I'm going to try to help the next person, right? Or here's the problem, let's solve it, right? So got stronger, got even stronger invested in the stem cells, biology, really getting into cellular biology throughout my undergrad. And it wasn't until third year whenever I started to take some lab courses. And it was like, okay, like I kind of see the fun of this now, right? Like, this isn't necessarily implementing the theory. This is like really how you discover the theory. And I've always kind of given, it's a really cheeky like example, but you have lawmakers that make the laws, and you have police officers that enforce them. And in some sense, research is the lawmakers, and then you have the medical community who kind of enforces these concepts. So this was, again, my second turning point in my life, where I was like, I like the hands-on aspect of research, and it was such a stupid experiment, like when I look back at it, but it was so cool. And so it was essentially what we did was we hot glued a moth to a rotating pole. And so this moth would fly in a circle for an hour, okay? And we would take the lymph out of the moth, and we were performing basically chromatography or mass spectrometry on the lymph of moths that have flown for an hour and moths that were settled for an hour. And it was just really like, biochemistry, whatever, simple lab course. But it was like, okay, this is cool. Like I can kind of see where this is going, right? I can kind of see, I want to do this. What if I did this? What if we did this? You can kind of start seeing my mind race, and this, as a scientist, you're like, okay, this experiment's done. Here's the other 5 I want to do. And so I kind of got a bug, if you would, or bitten by the research bug, where I'm like, okay, like I like this. I like this puzzle solving. I like this really critical thinking where I can be really creative, right? And really try to answer my problems through creative solutions.